Greetings everybody, I'm Michael and welcome to my studio and another video for how I podcast. Now remember, I'm not going to tell you how to podcast. I'm going to show you how I produce shows here in this studio, and today I want to talk about my mixing board, the Behringer Xenyx X1204USB. So come on into the studio. Let's take a look. It's important to remember that you don't need all of this hardware in order to produce a great show. You can use an ATR 2100 plugged into your computer via USB and produce a fine show. I need it for the types of shows that I produce, with multiple co-hosts and many different audio sources that we're juggling at the same time. We record live to tape as well, which is basically no edits, no mixing and editing things together. Basically, what you hear on our shows is what takes place in the studio. The only thing that I do on two of my podcasts is to add intro music and outro music after the fact, and that's just so that I have maximum control over the levels. Other than that, all sound effects, all stingers, sweepers, everything that's taking place during the show is live. And of course, the best way to handle all of that for me is through my Behringer X1204 USB. So let's take a closer look at this and we'll do an introduction to this board and how I use it. Oh, and by the way, this is the first time that I'm using this brand new lapel mic that I got the other day on Amazon for just under $19. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it sounds yet. We'll find out when the video is over. But if you like the way that this sounds and you are in the market for an affordable lapel mic that you can use in your digital audio recorder or your smartphone, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. This will be the first part in a series of videos. I'll talk about basic input and output, the first 4 channels, and how I gain stage my microphone for the cleanest possible sound. And I'll talk a little bit about sending the main mix out into the digital recorder. Now first, this is a USB board, so you can use USB for input and output, I/O. I only use the output from the USB to go into my computer to route sound to Skype or OBS, then onto Twitch, programs such as that, for if I were going to broadcast live on YouTube. Now, I don't use the input because I need maximum control, and so I need to have everything routed differently, hence the need for a mixing board. Audio that I use during the shows that come from my computer, I have those routed into the 5/6 stereo channel. That gives me maximum control. I'm going to say maximum a lot because I want maximum control of the sounds coming in via the slider. I can mute it easily by the push of a button. I can EQ it if I need to. I can even route it through the effects processor if I want to play around with that a little bit. My main mix out comes through the stereo RCA jacks and then on into my digital audio recorder. So all sounds coming in go eventually route their way through the main mix channel and out to my digital audio recorder, where it records a stereo file. The first 4 channels have XLR or TS/TRS quarter-inch input. Has a low cut switch, which you want to depress. You want that pushed down. That will prevent any noises. If you knock the microphone or you hit your desk that your microphone is attached to, it'll take a boom sound and turn it into a bump sound. And what that does is actually just cut out low bass frequencies. Next up is your input gain for this channel, for this strip. This board is equipped with a 1-knob compression, and then it has the EQ knobs. They call this the British style EQ, harkening back to the old days of recording at, say, Abbey Road Studios with the Beatles and such. Auxiliary out is used for if you're going to do a mix minus setup. And I'm sure many people have heard that term, mix minus, and well, what does that exactly mean? We'll talk about that on another video sometime. The orange knob is the FX out. You can route that to your effects processor, mix it into the main signal, and then out through your main outs to your audio recorder. The pan knob, so left or right, your mute button, your solo button, and then of course the fader. If I failed to mention it, the first 4 channels on this board are mono. The 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 channels are stereo inputs. Once you have everything coming into the board, all the sounds, all the audio inputs, then you're going to work their way all the way out to eventually the main mix out. That's what a mixing board is. So let's talk a little bit about gain staging. And that's just going to get your microphone levels dialed in so you have the cleanest sound possible going out of your main mix. I always start, and again, I'm just telling you how I do it. There may be a better way to do it, but this is how I do it, and it works great for me. I always start with my main mix at 0. That's the optimal setting for the output on the board. This board deals in voltages, and sitting at 0 is parity. That's where it's happy. That's where all things are good in the world, according to this board. Start out at 0 on your main mix, then come back to whatever channel you are plugged into and set your trim. That's your input levels for your microphone. You want to get it to just below clipping or peaking. If your input clips or peaks, then you have distortion. And it has a clip meter on the channel. So turn up your gain or your trim and keep turning it up until you start to see the clip light turn red, and then easily back it down ever so slightly. Now you want to do exciting things into your microphone, so don't just talk monotone at a low volume while you're setting your trim. You want to get loud. You know, if you're doing a show with several co-hosts and it's fun and somebody cuts a joke in the middle of a show and you laugh, you don't want it to clip. So on your microphone, laugh. Ha! 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 Or, you know, boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 2, 2. Talk with force and try and get it to clip. And when you see it just start to barely set that clip light, just back it down just a tad bit more. You want it right to the point where it's going to clip, but it doesn't clip. And then from there, you can adjust your fader. Bring your fader up to where you're comfortable. Actually, let me be more specific. Bring your fader up until it gets your recording levels where they need to be. Recording levels should be between -12 decibels up to -6 decibels. And then when you get really crazy and loud, you don't want it to ever go above -3 decibels. That gives you ample headroom if you're going to do any mixing and audio processing in your DAW. As far as your EQs go, I say that I prefer to leave them all at 0, but I do a little bit of tweaking. Just remember that it's always best to take away frequencies from the EQ. It's better to dial them back, below 0 than it is to add, +1, +2, +3 decibels in that frequency, because it goes back to the voltage coming out of the board. When I was training to become a digital audio engineer, my first time working in a digital studio using a DAW, I had to go through the training process for the owner of this studio, and he set up classrooms and had video presentations that he had given. We had to sit there and watch these videos and make notes, and there was a test afterwards. Well, one thing that he would always say that has stuck with me all these years is instead of talking about voltage, he would talk about math. And so when you add decibels, when you raise the frequency on a EQ, or if you raise the main mix out past 0, above 0, I should say, or any of these things that add decibels, add voltage, you're adding math, and what that equals is distortion. So that's why I like to use that terminology. You're adding math if you go up above 0. When you add math, you're adding noise. Noise is distortion, and you don't have as clean a signal to work with. One other thing, because I have been asked this several times, is why am I not hearing anything coming out of my board? You have to make sure that you have the main mix button depressed. That'll send it to the main mix channels and then on out to wherever you're sending your mix. Again, I send my mix to my digital audio recorder. That's basically how you gain stage your channel. I use the one button compression, and I use a lot of it actually because it's not that good, to be honest with you, and I'm just trying to keep things contained and tight on the vocals, so I like it. Again, let me reiterate, the important thing on gain staging your microphone is to start off with your main mix out at 0, then adjust your trim. In fact, start off with your slider for that channel, that strip, all the way down to 0, and just visually use the peak or the clip indicator as you're adjusting your trim to get your microphone input at the maximum level. And then bring up your slider, whatever you're using to record. I recommend that you go no higher than -12 to -6, and with peaks when you're really excited, maybe getting up to -3. It could go up a little bit higher than that every once in a while, but that's the sweet spot that you want to work in. I like to keep my vocals at around -10 consistently, and then occasionally getting up to about -7. That's just my preference. And that's just a basic overview of the operation of this Behringer X1204 USB. Perhaps next time we can talk about the stereo channels 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and how the effects processor works and mixing those all together to your final main mix out. If you have any questions, just leave them below and we'll address those on the next time or an upcoming video. Perhaps if we get enough questions, we can start doing periodic just Q&A videos where I just go through and answer whatever questions people may have. And in the meantime, go out there and produce something.